For today, we have a very special guest, a guest that has come for a visiting scholar position in the anthropology department. She's joining us from Turkey, Linda Baris Kirlangic. Linda Baris Kirlangic is a professor at Nevşehir Hacı Bektaş Veli University's Sociology Department since 2018. She is currently a postdoc research fellow at Stanford University's Department of Anthropology, working on the project Faith and Health Relationship amongst Religious Minorities in Turkey since September 2024. Her research interests include identity, minorities, sociology of education, sociology of the body, anthropology and sociology of religion, and medical sociology and anthropology. This talk is going to explore the intersection of Armenian ethnic identity, religious belief, and mental health among ethnic Armenians, particularly in Turkey and the USA. As the world's first nation to adopt Christianity collectively, Armenia's religious and ethnic identities became inseparably intertwined, making faith a target during historical episodes of violence. Drawing from her research on Armenian schools, minority mental health, and postdoctoral studies, Dr. Barış examines how selected traumas, systemic discrimination and racism, chronic minor distress, spiritual erosion shape the Armenian ethnic identity. She reflects on psychological consequences of how this leads to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, general mental exhaustion, and existential despair. Yes, please join me to welcome Dr. Linda Baris Kirlangic.
I am honored to be here today to share with you a journey that began in Istanbul's psychiatric hospitals and Armenian schools and later brought to me Stanford University. My research explores how our ethnic identity, religious belief, and mental health interest in the lives of Armenians in Turkey, a community that has long carried the weight of historical trauma, cultural suppression, and social invisibility. Personal stakes have always defined my research path. Some of the life stories I engaged with during my earlier studies, those of my father, my close friends, and members of my community, revealed how psychological suffering could be misunderstood, pathologized, or erased under systematic oppression. This taught me that studying these dynamics is not only an academic endeavor, but an existential necessity. In today's talk, I will walk you through 4 interconnected sections that trace this complex terrain. Here, this is my class picture. In today's talk, first, I want to talk Armenian identity formation in Turkey, how Armenian youth construct a sense of self within systems that simultaneously recognize and erase them. Secondly, religion, belief, and Armenians, how faith forced conversations and institutional silence shape the spiritual life of marginalized people. Third, mental health and Armenian identity in Turkey, how psychiatric diagnoses reflect not only individual suffering, but collective trauma and histories. Okay. And culture and madness at Stanford, how my postdoctoral work reframes these questions through an anthropological lens of belief, experience, and care. Individual is a product of its social, environmental, physical, and psychological construct. So, to be adjustable adequately, it is necessary for an individual to be fully fit in the surrounding. For that matter, health is very important, either it's psychological or physical. In the context of being psychologically healthy, it's necessary for an individual to have good mental well-being. Well-being is the name of inner feeling, for example, social, physical, environmental, and psychological aspects. Besides, also has some subjective and objective components. Well-being is a continuum that ranges from high, extreme happiness to low, extreme hopelessness and depression. Along with various construct coherence, satisfaction with life, coping, social support, dispositional optimism, self-efficacy, emotional intelligence, reality orientation, self-actualization, hope, and constructive thinking. Through patient narratives, classroom encounters, field interviews, and personal reflections, I hope to illustrate how being Armenian in Turkey is not simply a matter of ethnicity, it's an ongoing act of negotiation, adaptation, and survival. Armenians hold a distinct position as the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion in 301. This profound historical identity has shaped not only spiritual life but also socio-political vulnerability, particularly in Muslim majority Turkey. Growing up as an Armenian in Istanbul, I witnessed the subtle but profound psychic injuries inflicted by systematic discrimination. During my master's and doctoral research, I interviewed patients in Armenian and Greek hospitals in Istanbul, many of whom bore psychiatric scares linked to experiences of historical and contemporary marginalization. Yet living in Turkey and encountering Armenian communities in California revealed an alternative psychic landscape, communities where religious identity could be openly celebrated, where collective memory didn't have to be hidden. These contrasting experiences shape my research question. How does the political and religious environment influence the psychic life of Armenians across diaspora and homeland? Specific objectives include to explore how systematic discrimination and religious identity intervene in the formation of psychiatric symptoms such as paranoia, dissociation, and depression. To understand how collective trauma, including the Armenian genocide, becomes inscribed in the physique across generations. To contribute to clinical practices through culturally informed understandings of minority mental health. This project addresses a major gap by integrating trauma theory, cultural psychiatry, and diaspora studies to produce a cross-cultural analysis of Armenian mental health experiences. In our speech, section 1 is Armenian identity formation in Turkey. This part of is about my PhD thesis. I worked about what does it mean to be Armenian in Turkey. How is Armenian identity formed in a country where it is both officially recognized as a minority and unofficially pushed to margins. These are the central questions I have pursued across my research in Armenian schools, church, homes and public spaces, through interviews, classroom observations, and analysis of textbooks and state policies. Armenian identity formation in Turkey is not a static process, but rather an ongoing negotiation between recognition and erasure, visibility and invisibility, assimilation and survival. Throughout the time I was working on this thesis, I started to understand this. Then, what did this thesis change? So in me was that I started feeling more of an Armenian. This is actually the topic of this thesis while researching the effects of Armenian schools, in which I both studied as a student since elementary school and worked as a teacher. Later on identity, I witnessed how my Armenian identity has undergone a transformation in these studies. I have experienced the fluidity of the identity, which is mentioned in many works on identity first. The category of Armenian in Turkey carries not only an ethnic but also as a religious and political connotations. To be Armenian in this context is to bear the weight of the collective memory and the burden of being othered in national discourse. The first domain in which this burden is keenly felt is education. School function both as spaces of reproduction and contradiction, shaping the everyday experience of minority students. One of the most powerful examples I encountered in my doctoral research came from a female student who had transferred from Armenian school to a Turkish high school. A student who attended Armenian school in elementary and middle schools and transferred to Turkish school in high school had an experience regarding humiliation and exclusion as the following. For instance, a friend of mine asked me whether we ever get periods. I mean, when she asked that, I was in grade 9, but it was at the end of grade 9. And we used to talk with this person, and she learned that I was a Christian. Later that term, she noticed I didn't attend the religion classes. I don't know how that is possible. It was really surprised and angry when I heard that. I was really angry and said that they were ignorant, they were obvious to us. There was this Ajax advertisement. I told them, I am highlighting this on purpose. There was this monster in those Ajax advertisements. I told her that we have a human dress that we wear when we are to meet with humans, meaning you. I responded with like when we go back home, we are like those monsters in the Ajax advertisement. And she believed that. And after that day, I had minimum interaction with people. There was no plus or minus, no extra, no school organization, no eating, drinking event. I attended nothing. I was in this mentality that no one shall ask me for anything. I am gonna leave after graduation. No one should be there. Nothing more, nothing less. She described herself as a creature that walks around in human disguise in the daylight and as a monster at night, and the opposite side believed that. This incident happened in a big neighborhood like Bakırköy in Istanbul, and again in considerably big female vocational high school. Moreover, Bakırköy is one of the rare neighborhoods in Istanbul where Armenians reside densely, and even there isn't an Armenian school and church there. How can a high school student have such extreme imaginations about the Armenians? I think this is a question that needs to be answered. The fact that such a dehumanizing perception could exist there speaks volumes about the depth of ignorance and erasure in mainstream Turkish society. How can a child grow up with such monstrous imaginations about their classmates? This is a structural question, not a personal failing. Another student, recalling her university prep course, told me that a history teacher once joked, "There were 1.5 million Armenians, we killed 1.5 billion. She didn't disclose her Armenian identity to anyone in the classroom, but the silence that followed her memory was telling. I wanted to bring my father's books, but I didn't. I just kept silent. Being a minority in Turkey, an anecdote which an Armenian father shared regarding his child attending an Armenian school is another example for this experience. I had two sons. Both of them attended Armenian schools till this. I faced this question one day, Dad, why did we slaughter the Turks? I said, why? What's the matter? Someone messed with you? What's up? I said, he said, no, the history textbook says it. He said, we slaughtered the Turks. He was a child. He was in elementary school. Honestly, I had great difficulty for what kind of an explanation I should offer, what I should say. I attended an Armenian school. History textbooks taught in the Armenian schools are the same history textbooks taught in high schools all over the country. And these history textbooks, Armenians are shown as traitors. They are traitors, they step in the back. And you, as an Armenian, reading this, fall into a psychological confusion. Because, wow, we happen to be traitors. We did such things, but you don't hear that in your family. You hear a different history in your family. Confusion of these two histories in the heat of childhood years really creates very serious problems in the future. An Armenian school principal tells the following regarding the Armenians are not educated in their own history in Turkey. None of us know, those who know are rare, I am sure. This is truly a significant lack. Actually, all kids have a right to be informed about our culture in Anatolian history. Of course, this is a great luck. It's also hard to find someone who is equipped with this knowledge. Knowledge is strength, power. We say we are something without knowing about it. I am sure if we know, we would protect our culture, schools or community institutions with more care. I think if we know the things built brick by brick, we would back our society more. Another example about these contradictions do not remain abstract. They manifest in everyday gestures. Students hide their names, last names. They remove their crosses before leaving home. One interview said, I want to wear my biggest cross, just like Muslims proud to say, I am a Muslim. But I can't. I hide everything. The daily recitation of the Turkish national pledge anthems in both Turkish and Armenian schools until 2013 further enforces this erasure. Armenian students are compelled to say, I am a Turk, honest, hardworking, despite knowing that they are not Turks. This daily repetition becomes a ritual of symbolic violence. Students who begin in Turkish schools and then transfer to Armenian ones often describe a sense of relief. Finally, I can be myself. But those who transfer in the opposite direction often face their first experience of open discrimination during adolescence, a formative time for identity development. Armenians act as semi-protective enclaves, but they are not fully free. They are monitored by state-appointed Turkish teachers, inspected regularly, and punished for minor curriculum deviations. Yet the burden doesn't end in Turkey. When Armenians from Istanbul migrate, especially to diaspora communities in Los Angeles, they are often told they are not Armenian enough. One participant who moved in the USA after marriage, one day, 1 minute. Who moved to USA after marriage recalled being criticized by an Armenian from Armenia in the public park for speaking Turkish. Why do you speak Turkish, April? Of all months, she was told. Aren't you Armenian? An incident in the US told by one of our participants who was born and raised in Istanbul, got education in Armenian from elementary to the end of high school, moved to Los Angeles after university. The participant sees a friend from their high school, graduated from at a park, an Armenian from Armenia who witnessed them speaking in Turkish with each other, judged them, according to the participant, by saying, why do you speak in Turkish? Aren't you Armenian? She said, I haven't responded to her. I just avoided saying it's just a habit. But I got really angry. I say I am an Armenian from Istanbul. I mentioned my Armenians in Istanbul around Turks. I spoke Armenian, I spoke Turkish. It is none of your business. I mean, those in Armenia do not know what it means to mention Armenians in Turkey. They speak nonsense. Armenians in the US also calls Armenian Istanbul Turkish. Another Armenian in American school called my daughter Turkish. The kid didn't get it, but it means that the family teaches that. As evident in this example, an Armenian from Istanbul is Turkish according to an Armenian from Armenia. She teaches that to her children too. However, the situation makes the person who told this story angry and upset. She tries to tell how she maintained her identity despite living in Turkey. This diasporic shaming reveals a painful paradox. In Turkey, Armenians are treated as Armenians by Turks, often with suspicion and hostility. In the diaspora, they are labeled Turks by Armenians, dismissed or excluded. Thus, Armenians from Turkey are doubly marginalized. Their mother tongue may be Turkish, but their identity is Armenian. An Armenian identity formation in Turkey is shaped by silence, hiding, fear, lots of fear, contradictions, and exclusions within school walls, family homes, and diaspora communities alike. It's a process of navigating invisibility and hypervisibility, denial and survival. The psychological tool of this in-betweenness is profound, and it is precisely this thought that connects identity to mental health, a connection I will explore in the next section. But first, I would like to talk about religious beliefs among Armenians. My doctoral thesis began when I was trying to find the location of the Surkaç Armenian High School in Üsküdar and asked people on the street where the church was. This is because no one understood the name of the school, but they understood when I said church. Because all of the last remaining Armenian schools in Syria have a church in their country yard. Is the school in the church country yard? Or is the church in the school country yard? The answer to this question is an indication of how deeply intertwined religious belief and ethnic identity are, which is one of the fundamental markers of Armenian identity. For Armenians in Turkey, Christianity not only anchors ethnic identity, but also renders it vulnerable in a society where Islam is the normative religious and cultural framework. In 1930, it was revealed that since 1923, the Turkish state has been illegally profiling its citizens by using sacred race codes. Assignment based on person's ethnic identity, citizens with Greek origin are coded with 1, Armenians 2, Jews 3, Syria 4, other non-Muslims 5. This long history reverberates today in the way Armenian religious identity is experienced in Turkey. One participant from Adana shared that when she told others she was an Armenian, she was met with the accusation, "You don't love God." The assumption that Armenians are godless reflects a deeply enhanced stereotype, conflating non-Muslim identity with atheism or foreignness. For many Armenian students, this kind of social perceptions being early, a participant from Izmir who hides her Armenian identity due to her Turkish sounding name, recounted the trauma of attending Islamic religion classes that declared non-Muslim would go to the hell. Though no one in the class knew her background, the psychological harm was profound. She eventually transferred to an Armenian school in Istanbul, but not before enduring years of silent suffering. Another student expressed her internal conflict. "I hide my cross on my neck. My mother warns me when I am going outside, saying, 'Hide your cross.' I want to walk around wearing my biggest cross. Because I hide it so much, my feelings increased. The act of hiding one's faith becomes an emotional burden. transforming what might otherwise be private belief into a tool of resistance and pain. The pain of forced conversion is still felt in identity politics today. A participant from my fieldwork said, if language, religion, and race are what separate us from you, down with. Another participant added, Muslim people in Adana think Armenians don't believe in God, but I tell them we do. We talk to our God in Armenian. In Armenian churches across Turkey, the language of prayer remains a powerful state of cultural continuity. Parents often tell their children, we are in church now, don't speak Turkish. These sacred spaces offer a reprieve, however limited, from a public sphere that views Armenian Christianity as suspicious or illegitimate. Thus, religious belief continues to serve as both shelter and a target. Esra Çilingiriya wrote, a culture of fear, at least subconsciously, is part of the isolationist perception of collective Armenian identity. In the context of her excellent analysis of undercover political and economic relations involving representatives of the state and criminal elements, Navarro Yashin provides further insight. A political culture of fear and unknowing in Turkey is embodied to the point when the state is carried into bodies, habits, and internalized reactions of its subjects, whether they be within the borders of Turkey or abroad. This also explains the complicity of the wider Turkish society, over which the state holds a constant threat of retribution and fear. By the 19th, given the indiscriminate trampling of the rights and dignity of the minorities, virtually every Armenian in Turkey was tired of being Armenian. The Christian minorities in Turkey are not regarded as equal students of the majority state, but define the majority state as the other. As a religion was a significant aspect of nation building, those groups that didn't share the religion of the majority were considered outsiders. As such, the Armenian, Greek, and Jewish minorities, Akhtar adds, become the natural other, the natural enemy of the nation. Marginalization of Christianity in public life shaped how Armenian youth understand their faith and identity. Whether silently endured or openly defied, religious belief remains a cornerstone in the ongoing negotiation of Armenian existence in Turkey. Here, I will give another example. Kadir Dahan wrote in Altüst magazine in 2013. Whenever I hear something said about Armenians, especially if it is insulting, I feel a pang in the depths of my heart that hurts me deeply. During religion class, some children who counted to 7 or 8 left the classroom under the teacher's gaze, which was unclear whether it was tolerance or anger, and I couldn't understand why the rest of the class called them infidel and Armenian as they left. But at least I decided with my childish mind that being Armenian and infidel was a very bad thing. And since I was one of those who stayed inside, I wasn't one of the bad guys. My confusion and humiliation gave way to secret feeling of pleasure. Outside of religion class, in the neighborhood and at school, I had learned from my elders that my friends, whom they called Armenian and infidel, were sinners because they were not Muslim and would burn in hellfire. Moreover, they didn't go to the mosque, but to a building made of black stones called a church. My father said that color, black color, represented the fire, smoke, and the darkness of their souls. Instead of the call to prayer, the sound of bells come from their churches. The name of the neighborhood where they lived was Infidel Neighborhood. The city seemed to be split right down the middle. However, there is no one incident that has never left my mind. No matter what I do, I cannot forget it. The bread we call çarşı ekmeği, Adıyaman, which is a type of lavash or pide, is a very delicious, especially on holidays. The streets will be filled with children rushing to take this bread home as quick as possible. One of those children was my classmate. But when a group of children, perhaps 2 or 3 years older, began beating him with kicks and punches while shouting, bastard, Armenian bastard, and infidel, gavur, I froze in place. I didn't know what to do. And when the children left tranquilly, shouting threats, my friend was picking up the bread and trying to clean up the enemy droppings. I still didn't know what to do. Then my friend disappeared down the narrow street towards the Gavur neighborhood, his clothes in shambles, crying and pressing the bread in his hand to his chest. They called me tailed. I was forbidden to speak my language. I was beaten every day for it, but thank God I was not a gavur, and I consoled myself with a childish feeling I wasn't in my friend's situation. But this image stuck to my heart and brain like a tumor and never went away. And mental health part, I will begin. That early research eventually became my master thesis, which focused on the sociology of mental illness in Turkey, specifically among ethnic and religious minorities. It was through that fieldwork, long interviews with patients, family members, doctors, nurses, and the reading of hospital records that I first began to see mental health as something deeply intertwined with history, science, and identity. In retrospect, that study was the beginning of my intellectual and emotional engagement with the question that has since shaped much of my work. What does it mean to be Armenian in Turkey, and what does that do to the soul? My methodology was qualitative and deeply immersive. I conducted in-depth interviews at these 2 major minority-run hospitals in Istanbul. At Surpurgic Hospital, I spoke with Armenian patients, medical staff, and administrators about their experiences. At Balıklı Greek Hospital, where Armenians and Greek Orthodox communities often crossed paths. I observed how minority patients navigated illness in an institution that served as both a medical and cultural shelter. I also examined hospital records and psychiatric evaluations, always with full ethical oversight, and respect for confidentiality. One thing became very clear in the context of the Turkish Republic, where national identity has long been tied to strict understanding of Turkishness and Sunni Islam. Armenians who suffer from mental illness often experience that suffering through unique emotional registers. Their symptoms speak to more than biology. They speak to unspeakable grief, lingering fear, shame, silence, and hysterical loss. It has been approximately 20 years since I completed my master thesis. During this time, the number of mentally ill people I know personally and I am aware of has unfortunately not decreased. In fact, it has increased. As I argued my master thesis at the time and continue to believe even more strongly now in Stanford, the mental health of our ethnic Armenians in Turkey cannot be divorced from this broader social, political, and cultural terrain. It is not enough to ask what is wrong with the patient. We must ask what's wrong with the environment that produces such fragmentation. That study in 2006 wasn't just an academic project. It was the moment I realized that the experience of being Armenian in Turkey couldn't be studied without also studying vulnerability, silence, and resilience. It is where my work on identity and health truly begins. The patient, who is of Armenian origin, was born in 1949 in Tarlabaşı, district of Istanbul. His gender is male. Both his mother and father were also born in Istanbul. The father currently works in the kitchen of the hospital, where the patient is being treated. According to the head nurse, the patient's mother was also diagnosed with schizophrenia and was hospitalized in the same psychiatric institution. After the mother became ill, the father divorced her. During her stay at the hospital, the mother was also diagnosed with cancer and passed away in the hospital in 1984 due to the cancer. The family had no other children. The patient began to exhibit aggressive behavior from the age 21. In 1987, he was referred to the hospital with police escort on the grounds that he had been involved in various legal incidents. After an examination, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. During the interview with the patient, he constantly spoke about his mother's illness and his father's abandonment. When other questions were posed to him, he repeated the same answers. Therefore, the interview was terminated and his medical records were received. His file includes a forensic report stating that he is not criminally responsible. Another patient, who is of Armenian origin, born 1966 in Istanbul, she is female. She has adoptive mother. The patient also married twice, like her adoptive mother, in 17 years old first marriage, and she divorced. And during the interview, the patient said her husband was Turkish. her adoptive mother had not approved of her marrying a Turkish man, so the patient ran away from home to get married. After divorce, she reconciled with her adoptive mother. During the interview, the patient mentioned that her adoptive mother had told her when she was a child that her biological father was a Turkish policeman. When the patient brought up this topic, the head nurse stated that this information was not true. Upon hearing this, the patient began to protest, saying, I know neither Turkish nor Armenian customs. I am not a bad girl. At this point, the interview was terminated and her medical records were reviewed. I have little time. Okay, thank you. Since university, in my master thesis and my PhD thesis, I try to understand what is being Armenian in Turkey. And then I am here at Stanford, and I am studying with Tanya Luhman in anthropology department. After 20 years, after I saw patients not decrease, increase, all my works turns my story. It's about what happens when psychiatric illness comes through a family, not only biologically, but intergenerationally, culturally, spiritually. It's about how madness enters the household, not just a diagnosis, but as a mirror, a fear, a mystery. And it is this very personal connection that shaped the path I would later follow at Stanford on the anthropology of mental illness, spiritual experience, and psychiatric healing. It was through my family that I came to understand how belief, illness, and identity are never neatly separated. In my master thesis, I discussed Vamuk Volkan's theory of chosen trauma and its relevance to ethnic identity formation. According to Volkan, the emotional meaning of such traumatic events, along with the psychic defenses against it, are absorbed into the group's identity structure and passed on persistently from generation to generation. In my thesis, I extended Volkan's insights to the Armenian case in Turkey. I argued that members of newer generations might consciously or unconsciously share a desire to repair what was done to their ancestors and free themselves from the inherited burden of humiliation. Volkan notes that various ceremonial expressions may emerge as artistic creations, political demonstrations, or symbolic rituals, even when family's reputation. For this reason, wealthier families try to avoid institutional treatment altogether. They seek more invisible forms of care, often outside the Armenian community. In contrast, only the poorest patients, those with no alternative, end up in community hospitals like Supergic or Balıklı, and even then, only when they are considered too dangerous and unmanageable at home. As I noted in my thesis, the situation becomes even more severe due to double stigma these individuals face, first as members of an ethnic or religious minority in a predominantly Turkish and Sunni Muslim nation, and second as people living with mental illness. In this way, they are adults, both as gavur and as crazy. This dual marginalization creates a sense of isolation that is qualitatively different from what's in diasporic context. I want to give another important example. This is about issue of in mental illness, racial prejudice, stereotypes permit into hospitals regardless of the patient or doctor's belief or backgrounds. History of race relations in Turkey has significantly influenced the stigmas and stereotypes between doctors and patients in clinical interactions. This situation begins when an Armenian patient's family takes him to private psychiatric clinic for treatment. When the family notices symbols with nationalist elements hanging in the doctor's window or in his office, they refuse to allow the doctor to treat the patient. This could have been a valid reason in other cases involving racism. But in Turkey, being Armenian automatically makes it tragic. The Armenian male patient has paranoid thoughts that the police and media are following him. The patient's family may genuinely believe that patient's family believe this. The doctor could be like this, believe patient's paranoias, maybe doctor believe patient's paranoias, and because they trust the patient, because she's Armenian, her treatment is interrupted and they seek another doctor. This, of course, causes a delay in treatment. Another interpretation of this case makes the situation even more tragicomic. A schizophrenic Alevi patient from Dersim was not diagnosed for years. He said every time he came home, the police are after me. Meat like the CIA is following me. And his family believed him, saying it's true, it could be. He claims to be listened and followed. These are not true, of course, but later it becomes clear that they are delusions. However, for a long time, they are perceived as a symptom of mental illness rather than a delusion. So the patients begin to carry the schizophrenia label at the very late age. These examples may be among the deepest examples of being a religious and ethnic minority in Turkey. Okay, I am finishing. What I had learned through my fieldwork and through the intimate traces of my family story was that madness is not a series of pathology. It's a kind of method. It reveals the fractures in the world we inhabit. It forces us to listen differently. Anthropology gave me the tools to trace these fractures, to follow how people make sense of their suffering, not in spite of their culture, not through it. Psychiatry, at its best, seeks to relieve suffering, But sociology, anthropology, or social science ask what counts as suffering, who gets to define it, and what does healing look like when it is not just pharmacological, but existential, ethical, and social. This perspective has changed the way I approach all my work since, whether I am listening to a patient speak about invisible wounds or analyzing how Armenians students negotiate identity in Turkish schools. I no longer look for stable categories. I look for tensions, metaphors, broken narratives. I try to remain loyal, not to clinical definitions, but to complexity of people's lives.
No, thank you so much. You know, I have lived in Turkey 5 months as a refugee from Iran to go to Europe in 80s. And in 5 months, the police and meat came like 9 times visiting and asking questions and so on. And I realized that I myself become suspicious every person that I was sitting next to the window and was looking because they came as a private person. And every private person could be them because they would come in and with their eyes, they would make you undress. And it was very ugly situation, even though that I lived with a Turkish family in very high status. But I become kind of schizophrenia because I was seeing everyone like a private police that could come in to the house. And is it, I feel that is a very natural things when you live in a state that is like a Turkey that is so police with the meat and private police all over is all the time, and they come middle of the night, they come. When you mention those things, I think that is many of those things are very natural when you live over there. You don't need to be mentally sick, but you become suspicious and mentally sick after a while.
Yes.
Because you don't know how it is. And then I have a question about Armenian. How are the children in Turkey? Do they speak Armenian at home? Is in a school, can they speak Armenian? Is it Armenian as a language is taught in the universities? How is the situation? I would like to know more about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In my PhD thesis, I studied Armenian schools in Turkey. We learned Armenian language from elementary school. All the courses are Armenian, except national history and geography lessons and Turkish language lessons. And of course, in university, they couldn't speak Armenian or learning Armenian. Only a few universities have Armenian literature department in Turkey. And Armenian schools, when children learn their language, maybe their parents, families don't know Armenian language. They couldn't speak their home Armenian. Or some of families' parents are also graduated from Armenian school, they know. But in the street, you cannot speak Armenian language. This is also about Turkish state political beginning in 1923. all the Turkish Republic history, Ayhan Aktar said, all the minorities history, what the national state, Turkish national state behave politically, minority people. This is the history of Turkish Republic, because all minorities done, and they create another nation. Like this, language is very important for identity. For all Armenians in diaspora or Turkey, not important, because of language is most important thing in Armenian identity. Also, Armenian schools are very important in Turkey, because they couldn't learn from anywhere except schools.
Thank you. Can you please come up?
Well, thank you so much for a very informative lecture. One comment I want to make. When the people in LA say you're not Armenian because you speak English, ask them if they speak English or Armenian in the streets, and whether that makes them Armenian or not. You see, we can't be double-minded. If I speak English, I'm still Armenian.
Yes.
If you speak Turkish, you're still Armenian. So that's the language you grew up with. So I don't think we need to be so defensive of the language we grew up with. I've been in Turkey too, numerous times. I've been to Tıbravank School in Istanbul. I understand the tightrope that the Armenians walk there, and some of them have figured out how to live a reasonable life. My question to you is, how were you able to do this study in a Turkish university, right? Well, could you explain what it took for you to be able to do this thesis?
It's a very good question, because I want to talk about this, but I don't have time. In my master thesis, I became very problematic things in Mimar Sinan University. My supervisor is Professor Ali Akay, and only in my thesis, how can I say,
What do you want to say?
as önerisi
Yeah.
giving
Yeah, thesis.
first step of thesis.
Proposal.
First step of thesis, they don't accept, institute don't accept my thesis. Only I said the little three sentence in that proposal. And Alakay said how it becomes. This is first time not allowed, second time again not allowed. Then my supervisor come institution and said she is doing what football did. Why you don't allow this? And third time we wrote another subtitle, another sentences. And you cannot understand what in the thesis, and it's the master thesis. His story is like that. And in Middlesex Technical University, Ankara, when I finished my thesis, my supervisor also said, "This is you cannot give your presentation, your doctoral thesis, because one of my jury not accepted my things, and then many another things.
Negotiation?
Yes, and it's again allowed. But my supervisor said me, you try what you try to understand in your PhD thesis is what you face to face with people here is the same. Because I lived this situation. He saw this, and he's also little nationalist man before me. And he changed after my thesis.
Yeah. So who was not allowing in the first case in Mimar Sinan, like the institute?
Institution, yes.
The
Social science
Yeah.
institution.
Institute for Social Science.
Yes, yes,
They were not allowed. But
Yes.
your advisor was fine.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Why they kept trying and trying.
Yes,
It
yes.
was the advocate for.
And we put on my thesis name is social facts, not social facts, social events, and the social facts and the social effects. My master thesis name is social events that have social effects like this. You cannot understand anything.
You have to go critic.
Yes. This is
I
our
totally get it.
Yeah. So
and
like,
both of them in master thesis and my PhD thesis supervisors says to me, this is the first time we see this.
And we have to say,
All the
thanks
professionals.
to the professor for allowing you to do this presentation and numerous other times. Thank you so
no,
much.
it's not allowing. It is just our duty to share our local resources. She's a local resource now, like for this year. And I want to say a couple of words by way of question as well. One is, so like Armenian, people in the audience may not know, but it's a curse word in Turkish as well, just like Çingene for the Coptics, Kıpti, just like also Durzi. These is one of the curse words. It is literally that way, and that is what Armenians are really facing in the society. And I have never met an Armenian until college. Imagine that, growing up in Istanbul, and also, like my mother said, she was going to high school in Adana, and a classmate fell in love with another classmate, a girl, and then they were gonna propose, is what he wanted to do, because you can't propose in person, your family had to propose. So then, like, when he shared that with her, she said, no, I cannot marry you. Like, what's wrong? What happened? Like, she then eventually has to come out and say, okay, I'm an Armenian. So that is my mother's memory with Armenians. My question is, so you went through, like the current stigma and the trauma resulting from that. But there is also like one big elephant in the room, which is the denial of the genocide. And this is basically through and through in the society. Like every Turk basically is raised in their schools, believing that Armenians are all enemies, they hate Turks, and that is how they grow up. And they are also grow up with the quote unquote knowledge that Armenian genocide is just like a clash between Turks and Armenians during the World War I, and then they had to be relocated to Syria because they were stabbing Turks behind the back. That is the official story. So, but like there's this big traumatic event which is denied to Armenians, and I'm sure like it must have intergenerational ongoing effects. And like not only you are killed, but also they deny that you were killed. So how does it work in the sense of the long-term effects of the genocide?
It's I had very much examples about this. I cannot mention here because of time, but this is about Also, Turkish national identity state want to shape one identity, Turkish identity. It's shaped with also Armenian identity with enemies. They construct their identity with enemies. Also Christian enemies, also unfaithful enemies, because they want to construct strong Turkish national identity. They need all the time enemies, and unfortunately, this always, like Johannes Kılıçdaroğlu said, all of time Armenians. He said when the last Armenian died, again Turkish national state burned another Armenian. They need
Armenians.
the Armenians' identities for nationalist identities. State.
Can you please come up there?
So my question is simply that according to genocide scholars, there's 10 steps to genocide. And according in that, well, looking at that category, the Armenian genocide basically never ended. It's still continuing.
Yes.
So my question to you is that do people, Armenians in Turkey, do see it as a continuation of genocide, or it's just that one bad thing that happened in 1915 and now they have to deal with the fallout of it?
I can answer this my personal experience. Also, I didn't know Armenian genocide in Armenian schools when I was a child. I never in the school or in my family, we never talk about this.
Nothing in class or
No, nothing.
teacher program?
Nothing. And there is no internet, there is no things that time, 90s. And after in university, I graduated from Istanbul University Philosophy Department. My left how can I say, friends only talk about this Armenian issue. And I look libraries, and only I find Taner Akçam's book, only in Turkish, and I read it. And then to my master thesis, I again didn't talk with another people. And I want to, I have another story for my, how can I choose my mental health issue study for master thesis. I have a friend in Beyoğlu, he said he was a patient in Bakırköy hospital, mental health hospital. He said all the patients in Bakırköy, half of Kurds, half of Armenians. And when he said this, I tried to find a study subject in my master thesis. Said, what is this? Why patients are Armenians and Turks? And I want to look minorities, religious minorities in Turkey, with close authority in Greek, Jews and Armenians. We are, they say we are minority, non-Muslim minority. And also, I don't understand why in academy or historians never study about this mental health issue professionally, academically, with patients, with doctors, with family narratives, everything, because we are our number, Armenian number is decreased, and one patient in family also affects all family, all the community. And this is also passed generation to generation, also their childs. And I am trying to study this issue, but in California, I also give experiences. When I say I am from Turkey, some of Armenian people don't look my face after I say I am from Turkey. And I speak Armenian with them, but again, they don't want to speak with me. This is also enough.
Sorry about that. Our mic doesn't work consistently.
Sorry.
That's why it only looks that way.
So unfortunately, people are people and not everybody's good-hearted like you. And it is very unfortunate if you experience any kind of prejudice because you are from Turkey. But we have a lot of good friends. And your friend Hasmik Jingos emailed me today. Tell Linda that I will see her at Berkeley because they live in the East Bay. What I wanted to, first of all, there's this concept called demonizing the victims. It's sort of a general psychological theme, not just between Armenians and Turks, but generally. That might be something interesting to study and then tie this into, just as a thought. But I have a question. You spoke a lot about the Armenian situation in Turkey. What about the other minorities, Greeks, Jews, maybe even Kurds now, but especially Greeks, because at that time. So could you mention how their plight is? Yeah.
In Greek hospital, Balıklı Hospital, I talked with doctors, and he said, no, you cannot find Greek patients here because of, again, being minority and stigmatization, because their community is very, very little, and they don't want to be labeled with mental ill and also minority Greek. If they become together, it's also terrible for minorities or all of the community. And because of this, I only one example, I have only one Greek patient example. And also in master's, I give 8 patients narratives. And I 3 of them I know. And closely I know. And again, this year, also I heard another persons became mentally ill when I was here. I heard, and also when I wrote my thesis, when I am writing thesis, I also experience the other with my close persons live in major depression, and please.
I want to first give you a comment about the people in Los Angeles. I understand them because the word genocides created by an Armenian who lost hundreds of his relatives and family, whole relative. And he fought for his, during whole his life to put the name of genocides. And I can understand because for me, I am Iranian and I am not no religion, but for me it's very strange that Armenian speak Turkish because I lived in Turkey, and that is my question. I have a question because I realize that Turks are very nationalist. They called Kurd mountain Turk. And I remember I did the haircut, and the woman said, if you were Greek, I would cut your head. And I remember those things. But now I am wondering which part of this contact or treatment of the people is a nationalist of Turkey, and which part is the Islam? Because in Iran also they call like those who are really Muslim call Jews and Christians dirty, and they don't touch them and those things. And you know, in Saudi Arabia, before Mohammed bin Salman, they would not allow any Christian coming to Mecca or Jews and so on. Which part of that in Turkish I try to understand through your seminar, but I cannot. Which part is the Turkish nationalist? Which part is the Islam? Because all the Muslims treat Jews bad.
Turkish national identity became national identity with Sunni Islam because of these religious minorities, except Sunni, all of them are religious minorities. They are born together. All Turkish Republic construct with this, their togetherness.
Oh, you cannot separate.
Yes.
Because in Iran you can separate. Because in Iran you can separate those who are real Muslim.
Okay.
Mhm.
If you are not Sunni, again, not like this. You again religious minority, like Alevi people. They are not Armenians, they are Islam, they are Turks or Kurds, but they are not Sunni.
Okay, they are minorities.
Yes.